Ross and Jono with you. We are discussing the temple's lost treasures. Ross, where did they go? How many times did they go? This is the question. The reason why we are doing this topic is because last week, being Hanukkah, we discussed Maccabees, and the interesting thing about that is that in Maccabees chapter 1, verses 20 to 24 says, after Antiochus had defeated Egypt in the 143rd year, he returned and went up against Israel and against Jerusalem with a strong force. And he insolently, Ross, entered the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the lampstands with the light and the utensils and the offering table and the cups and the bowls and the censers and the curtain and all the bits and pieces. He took away the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. He took all the hidden treasures, Ross.
That's right. You can't get anything by this guy, I'm telling you.
He found the secret passageway and he took all of those bits as well, and he took them back to his own country. He shed much blood and, spoke with great arrogance.
He's really a bad guy. Antiochus. Now, remember, I say Antiochus, you say a different...
Antiochus, Epiphanes, Epiphanes.
But he's a bad guy, and he steals the stuff.
He's a bad guy.
And we started asking one another, hey, and this is offline, we started saying, but he's not the only one. How many are there? How many times has someone else plundered? That was the question.
Plundered. Now, here's what, that's right. Plundered, pillaged, looted, Ross. And it's not just that, because as we highlighted last week, First Maccabees chapter 4, verses 49 to 51 says, they made new holy vessels. They made new ones, Ross.
And you have to. And you have to if your other stuff is stolen.
Once they made that stuff, they brought the lampstand and the altar of incense and the table into the temple, and they burned the incense and the altar and the lampstand, and it says they placed, they finished all the work. Now, the thing that we were highlighting there is that a little later on, in 78 CE, the Romans sacked the temple.
In 70
in
CE.
70.
Yeah.
And what we have is the Ark of Titus depicting them carrying away the menorah. And a lot of people think that's the menorah, that's Solomon's menorah. It's not. This is maybe it's the menorah that the Maccabees made, and maybe it's one like the one that we see in fact, the one that we see in the old city of Jerusalem is designed according to the way that one looks. Much bigger, has a wooden interior. It's not 100% gold. It's this, that, and the other. It's not the same. Okay. So the question,
let me jump in.
How many times has this happened, Ross?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to jump in and make sure I'm following. So one of the things we want to get into is if the one that is on the Arch of Titus is not what the real one looked like, but maybe is a depiction. I did that because you call. Yeah, that's right. Titus.
I call him Titus.
Well, you have to follow me. We're going to get all this pronunciation.
What's going on?
All right. So look, but if it's right, if that's not what it looks like, if that is a depiction of something which is later, and it's not so I used to think that the very menorah that was built in the Pentateuch is the same one that followed the Israelites all the way around, and it would have been set up in the tabernacle, and it would have been set up in the first temple, and it would have been set up in the second temple, but that's not the case. And not only is that not the case, we don't know where any of this is. So let me say another thing that crossed my mind that's going to lead us into maybe something we do later. I started thinking about all of the stuff, if I can call it stuff, the holy articles, the implements, the vessels, that the holy things, if those things, how many of them do we actually have? We don't have the temple, we don't have the tabernacle, we don't have the ark, we don't have the tablets that went in the ark. What is the Urim and the Tumim? And we don't even have those. I mean, so where are, Jono, the temple treasures? And when did they first get lost? And I mean, how many revisions have we made?
Yeah, so how many times have these things been taken? How many times have they been returned? How many times have they been replaced? And to your point, when they've been replaced, how many times have they made an even more elaborate version of the original. So just to use the menorah once again, we know that ancient depictions of the menorah is just a simple, smaller, pure gold lampstand with a tripod base. And that's obviously not what we see in the relief of Titus or Titus or whatever you want to call him.
Okay, I'll call him Titus.
Okay. Okay. So now what I want to do, Ross, is I want to go back to just go back in time a little bit from the Maccabees to Jeremiah. And I'm going to use Jeremiah as a time machine because in Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 12 to 15, he is speaking, or rather God is speaking through Jeremiah, and he says, "Now go to my place that was in Shiloh, where I made my name dwell at first, and see what I did to that." You know, what I did at Shiloh, you think that I'm not going to do the same to this temple here. He says the same thing in Jeremiah chapter, or something similar in Jeremiah chapter 26. Heed the words of my servant, the prophet, whom I send you urgently, and you have not heeded.
Sorry. By the way, I had to jump in because Jeremiah is my guy. Jeremiah chapter 7 and Jeremiah 7 and 26, the reason it sounds the same is it's the same event. The both of these. Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Just wanted to make sure it was in there.
No, absolutely. This house shall be like Shiloh, and referring to the temple, and this place shall be desolated without inhabitants. So my question is, and I did a little, and I'm surprised that I couldn't really find a definitive answer. So I'm throwing the ball into your court. What do we know about what happened in Shiloh? Do we really know what happened in Shiloh? Do we have specifics there? And if we do, what happened to the tabernacle sacred items?
Well, that is an excellent question. And what we do know is extremely limited. Now, we do happen to have an expert online with us today if he feels like jumping in later. He's even written a book that has some of these things in there. I'm talking about our friend and author, Daniel Wright. Plus, he's very connected with the team at Shiloh. Now, one thing that I will say, though, is we know that the tabernacle stood there, according to the biblical narrative, for 369 years, right? We go there all the time with the Tanakh tour. Every year we go there, and it's very important because it's such a central part of biblical history and the unfolding narrative. But it seems to come to an abrupt end. Now, one thing that we do know is that by 2 Samuel 6, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, we do know that when David, for instance, brings to Jerusalem the tent, the tabernacle, and all of its furnitures and so forth, it says very clearly that he brings it there. And then some scholars even propose that becomes, it's stored in the temple. So I'm not going to go there at this point, but we can later. But it's the idea that everything, the biblical writers almost lead us to believe, Jonah, let me put it that way, that everything that Moses made, all of the furniture, all of the holy items, that they were just brought along into Jerusalem, and then now, instead of the tabernacle, we have the temple.
So if I may, so just to get this straight in my head, and I'm sure that Daniel can elaborate on this a little bit later, but what we're to understand is that in Jeremiah, God is saying, I'm going to do to this place what I did to Shiloh if you guys don't turn around. And he does. And so then we go back to Shiloh and we go, well, did this happen in Shiloh as well? And if so, how is it that the sacred items managed to just be hidden away and was safe from this destruction and all this sort of stuff? And you're citing now passages that would suggest that was the case. All right. Or did they make new ones? Don't know. All right. So where do we begin? Let's go right back after that event.
Now, how did you build? Hold on just a second. Before we get into the verses, let's hit this for our audience. How did you build your list? I know how I built mine, but we didn't talk about this. What was it that you looked up? Because there are quite a few references to ransacking of the temple or different kings giving stuff away. What did you look up? I'm curious.
So what I did was I used Bible Gateway. I did just simple word and passage searches to find occurrences like this, and then I used cross-references to try and find maybe some that were hidden within the text, something similar happening here and there. But it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And actually, your list is a lot longer than mine. I'll tell you where mine begins. And I think yours begins similarly, but it just so happens that here I am in Second Chronicles chapter 12, and I think you're in First Kings chapter 14.
I am, and let me take it right there for just a second. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that we each got the same story, but we went to different accounts. Now, again, I always, often, I can almost say always, recommend this book, A Synoptic Harmony of Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles, with related passages from Psalms, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezra by James D. Newsom Jr. This demonstrates the harmony, if you will, but also the disharmony between the accounts. We're going to get into some of those in places. One of the things that I wanted to say before we get started after mentioning this book is that I'm currently doing a study on the Pentateuch, and I'm reading Joseph Blenkinsop. Can I read one paragraph about the difference between Kings and Chronicles? He says that the study of Devet, D-E, and then capital W-E-T-T-E, Devet, marks a decisively new phase in the investigation of the Pentateuch. What he demonstrated convincingly was that the books of Chronicles present a totally different picture of the religion of Israel under the monarchy from that of Samuel and Kings. And Jono, I know that there are fundamentalists who watch our show, and they would get, a little bit anxious when they hear me say that. But that is a fact. You cannot deny. You put Kings and Chronicles together, and they present what has been called in modern times alternative facts. They reveal different stories about what are presumably the same events. Now to our story. You found a reference in Chronicles, 2 Chronicles 12, and I found one in 1 Kings 14:25. What's going on there, Jono? What's happening in that passage?
Well, I'll read it to you from Chronicles chapter 12, and this is from, from verse 1. When the kingdom of Rehoboam was established and strong, he and all Israel with him abandoned the law of the Lord. 2, and it came about in King Rehoboam's 5th year, Ross, because they had been unfaithful to the Lord, that Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. And it continues in verse 9. So Shishak, king of Egypt, went up against Jerusalem, and he took, Ross, the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's palace, and he took everything. He took the gold shields which Solomon had made. Then King Rehoboam he said, you know what, taking that, better make some more shields. Just make them out of bronze because we don't have any more gold. So he made bronze ones instead. What do you got?
That's pretty close, but let me tell you, the thing that's interesting to me, you're dealing with the chronicler who is from the southern kingdom. This is what we believe in scholarship, is that the chronicler, the one who wrote Chronicles for us, is situated in the south, in the kingdom of Judah, the Davidic. And then I'm reading from 1 Kings, which is often associated with the northern tradition. Here's all it says. Now, you have 10 verses to give you what you got. Mine says, in the 5th year of King Rehoboam, Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem, took away the treasure of the house of the Lord, the treasure of the king house. He took everything away, Jono. He took away the shields of gold. They're almost identical here. And King Rehoboam made in their stead shields of bronze and committed them to the hands of the officers of the guard, etc. Now, so they're pretty much the same there. But Chronicles, the chronicler knows a lot more detail between verse 3 and 8. There's nothing comparable to that in Kings because the writer of Kings isn't familiar with what's going on. So now, one point, Solomon built the temple. This is Solomon's son. Almost immediately, Jono, things disappear. Some of the treasures of the temple are gone already.
Now, some or all, Ross?
Well, that's the question, because it does say he took away everything.
Everything. And you got to understand, like, did he look at the ark, the menorah? You know, those are really very, very holy, and it's very special to the Israelites. So you know what? You better leave those there. I don't see why that would be the case.
Yeah.
So it raises questions, right? All right. So the next one that I have, Ross, are we ready to go to the next one?
Yeah, man. Let's roll. We got a lot to go over, because now we're assuming that some of the items, at least the shields that were once made out of gold, have been replaced with bronze shields. So now the temple is taking a different character. The decor is changing. Now, where are you at? Where are you going?
Yeah. Now I'm going to. The next one on my list is 1 Kings 15, so it's immediately after that. Now there was a war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel. All their days, Baasha, king of Israel, marched against Judah and fortified Ramah in order to prevent anyone from going out or coming into Asa, king of Judah. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold, all the silver and the gold, Ross, that was left in the treasuries of the house of the Lord and the treasuries of the king's house, and handed it over to his servants. And King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad. All right, so he's the grandson of the king of Aram who lives in Damascus. So he sent it all the way out there. And he said, listen, make a treaty between you and me, as if there was, because, all this sort of stuff. He accepts it. He listened to Asa, and he sent commanders of the armies and da-da-da-da-da. So it formed an alliance. He spent money on an alliance to protect himself.
Very good. Now, so here we've got, and if people will write these down and go read these detailed accounts, we're going to cover most of the detail that deals with the treasures of the temple. But we encourage you to go study the stories around these accounts that we're giving. Now, what I will say, let me make sure on in my handy little guide here, when you read 1 Kings 15. Just so people can have this other reference if they don't have the Newsom book, it's also in 2 Chronicles 16:1 through 17:1. Same account, with differences, with details that are different. Now, look at, I started to give you a page number, but I'm going to go ahead and let me get the next one. And let's see if you have this one. Do you have... It's like we're playing fish. Do you have 2 shields of bronze? Okay.
2 shields of bronze.
Shields of David.
The next thing that I've listed here is 2 Kings 14, and I suspect I probably jumped over some things. What have you got on your list?
You have. Let me just, now remember, I told you before the show that a couple of these points aren't necessarily things being looted, but this is an interesting point. It's connected. It's in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 10, 2 Chronicles 23, verse 9. It says, and Jehoiada delivered to the captains and the spears and shields that had been King David's, which were in the house of the Lord. So my point is that after we have the looting of several shields and so forth, I found it at least interesting. It's just an observation, Jono, that here we've got the priest, Jehoiada, is observing that, oh, look, here are the shields of David. So they wouldn't have been stolen, evidently. Then we get to, then the next thing in my notes is that there is a major reparation by Jehoash. And so what I'd like to do now... let me see if this is right. I wanted to bring in a story about Athaliah. Now, quickly, Athaliah there are 2 different accounts. One has her as the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, and the other is that she's a daughter of Omri. The biblical accounts differ here, but I'm going to go with most scholars and say that she's the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. Now remember, Jezebel is a princess from Sidon, which is big into Baal worship. Seth and I are currently working on a series to come out at some point in the future on the northern kingdom, and I'm really into Baal right now. Don't take that the wrong way. I don't mean like I'm into him like Christians are into Jesus. I mean, I'm really studying. That's right. That's right. Okay, so here we go. 2 Chronicles chapter 24 and verse 7. Listen to this. The sons of Athaliah, that wicked woman, the writer of Chronicles says, had broken into the house of God and had also used all the dedicated things of the house of the Lord for Baal. So they're getting these holy items, and they're like, I think I want to move that over to the temple of Baal.
So this is a break and enter, Ross.
It is.
This is a break and enter, and she steals all the stuff, and she says, "You know what? This would look good in the temple of Baal." Okay, all right. So this is what she does.
All right. So so I think that was pretty wicked, and I think the writer of Chronicles is right to tell us that she's wicked. Okay. Now the next thing we want to cover. Let me see. This is a question for you, Jono. I'm going to read you 2 accounts, very short, and you tell me if they're the same story because they report to be. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. I'm in 2 Kings 21, and it says the carpenters, verse 11 through 15, carpenters and builders who worked on the house of the Lord, the masons, the stone cutters, as well as to buy timber and quarried stone for making repairs to the house of the Lord, and for any outlay upon the repairs of the house. But there were not made for the house of the Lord basins of silver, snuffers, bowls, trumpets, or any vessels of gold or of silver from the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. So my question, now this is an account not of a plundering or a looting, but of an attempt. Here it says they did not make any of these treasures. You get that? You follow me on that? Now listen to the chronicler. Same story, the king and Jehoiada, and they're getting the masons and carpenters. This is 2 Chronicles 24, 11 through 14. I'm going to pick up in 13. So those who were engaged in the work labored, and the repairing went forward in their hands, and they restored the house of God to its proper condition and strengthened it, Jono. And when they had finished, they brought the rest of the money before the king and Jehoiada, and with it they made utensils for the house of the Lord, both for the service and for the burnt offerings and dishes for the incense and vessels of gold and silver. Isn't that interesting? Right. So Kings, look at this. Kings says they had a restoration attempt. They made some things, but they did not make things of the vessels of silver and gold. Chronicles says, they did.
Okay, that's interesting, isn't it?
The only reason I can think that these two would be different is if later the chronicler wants to show that these items were made in ancient times. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. All right.
I don't know. Yep. That's speculation on my part. I don't know, but I just know the two don't agree.
Yeah, I remember we made speculation in that regard when we were talking about the snake on a pole, but people can go back and listen to that. Now, let me ask you a question about that, Ross.
Okay.
We jumped to, we're currently in 2 Kings chapter 21, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So because I know it doesn't always chronologically follow, so 2 Kings chapter 14, is this before or after that event?
2 Kings 14. Go ahead and give me that one if you have it. Let's make sure.
What I have is, this is verse 8. Amaziah sent messengers to Joash, the son of Jehoaz, son of Jehu, king of Israel, saying, "Come, let us face each other in combat." And it goes on verse 11. So Joash, king of Israel, went up and they faced each other. He decided he really didn't want to, but Amaziah insisted. So he went up. They faced each other at Beit Shemesh, we've been there, which belongs to Judah. And Judah was defeated by Israel, and they fled, every man to his tent. Then Joash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, at Beit Shemesh and came to Jerusalem and tore down the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim to the corner gate, 400 cubits, Ross, and he took all the gold and the silver and all the utensils which were found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house, the hostages as well, and returned to Samaria. So he took it all. He took it all and he went back to Samaria, Ross. So I'm not sure where this fits chronologically in regards to
no, this is
chapter 21, but here's all the utensils.
Yep, that's right. Yep, and he gives it all to Hazael, king of Aram. So there you go. Now, what you have to ask yourself, if you haven't already, is what is left in the house from the original stuff. I mean, did he bypass? Did he say, "Oh, I better keep the Ark of the Covenant. I better keep the menorah. I'm going to leave." But maybe I'll just give them some of these other things. Do you think that's what's happening, or do you think he gives every bit of it away? That's the question, isn't it?
It is the question. It raises the question. And then there's another occurrence of messing with the sacred vessels, Ross, and that is in 2 Kings chapter 16. Can I give you that one?
Did you? So you just did, hold on just a second. Did you just do 2 Kings 14:14?
Did I? Let's make sure that we get all of this.
Yeah, I think you did. Yep. Okay. All right.
So in 16, help me understand what's going on here. This is Ahaz, right? It says he went even further than any of his predecessors. Okay, so
oh yeah, he's a bad guy.
So what he's done, my understanding of what he's done here, and this is 2 Kings 16, verses 10 to 17. He goes on holidays to Assyria.
Yep.
He arrives in Damascus, and he sees the king's altar. He's got an altar there, and he goes, "Well, I like that one. That's not bad. That's a good." Have you got the specs on that? Have you got the plans? Because I'd love to make one of those for myself. And lo and behold, he gets a copy of the plans and he sends it back and he says, "Hey, you guys, make one of these for me." And he they make this altar. He's like, "Yes, great." And then he goes, "You know what'll look great around this is if I take some of the stuff from the temple and just sort of decorate it around here like this and that." What's your understanding of this passage?
Well, I think you're exactly right. It boggles the mind. And now I may have missed it because I was flipping through my book, but let me ask you, did you point out that when he goes on holiday in verse 8 that he took
to Damascus?
Did you say that he took the silver and gold?
It says, okay, so when King Ahaz went to Damascus to greet King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, he saw, how do you pronounce that guy's name, by the way?
Wait. Hold on, Jono. I'm saying you jumped ahead. You're excited.
Did I?
Yeah, my question. Now go back to verse 7.
Oh, verse 7. Send messages to Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria. I am your servant and your son. Come and deliver me from the hands of the king of Aram and from the hands of the king of Israel who are attacking me. Ahaz took the gold and the silver that were on hand in the house of the Lord in the treasuries of the royal place, and he sent them as a gift to King. Okay, so once again,
he strips the house of the Lord and does so to placate the king of Assyria. And then when he gets there, now he goes, that's a nice looking altar you got there.
That's a good altar.
I think that would look lovely in front of the house of the Lord back in Jerusalem.
Yeah. So the priest Uriah did so he built it for him, and he returned from Damascus. When the king returned from Damascus, he went up the altar, he ascended, he offered his offerings and all these bits and pieces, and then he took, he took from the temple all these bits and pieces and took them for himself and decorated this whole thing.
And then, but get this, Jono. Now, this is where it gets, again, look at verse 17. 2 Kings 16:17. King Ahaz cut off the frames of the stands. He's like doing a chop shop here. This is like you bring in a stolen car into a bad neighborhood, pull the garage door down, and go to whacking it to pieces. Look, and remove the laver.
What's going on?
Yeah, and he took down the sea from off the bronze oxen that were under it and put it under upon a pediment of stone. And the covered way for Shabbat, or the Sabbath, which had been built inside the palace and the outer palace, he removed from the house of the Lord because of the king of Assyria. What does that mean? It means he's given him all the, hey, whack that thing down that Solomon made, melt it down, and ship it to this enemy of ours to try to placate him. What in the world is going on? Ahaz is bad. He's very bad.
Bronze oxen, by the way, Ross. It almost is worth adding to the list of the cherubim and the snake on the pole, and kind of golden calf much.
Let me tell you. Go ahead. We'll just brush right over the fact that in front of the house of the Lord they got a bunch of bronze bulls and cows and brazen whatever. But look,
interesting.
Yeah, this is crazy. And then the thing that gets me is you have Baal worship is real big, and one of the symbols for Baal is this cow. So you have to wonder, is that? Now I know some people are thinking, nah, you got to go read 1 Kings chapter 6 and 7 and the building of the temple. The question is, who built that temple? The Tyrians. And up in Tyre and Sidon, they be, as we say, they be loving them some Baal worship. Okay. Now, Hezekiah.
I was just about to say Hezekiah, who is super righteous king. All right, go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, he is a model of goodness and righteousness and holiness. So when you look at Hezekiah's reform, let's go to 2 Kings 18. 2 Kings 18. And by the way, it's in 2 Kings 18, 14 through 22. But it's also in 2 Chronicles 32, 27 through 30. But anyway, we're going to look at 2 Kings 18, and I'm going to look very closely at verse 15 and 16, I think. Yep. Now, by the way, this is Hezekiah, verse 14. King of Judah sent a message to the king of Assyria at Lachish. He says, I've done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I'll bear. This is the righteous king, good old Hezekiah. And the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. Verse 15, and Hezekiah, the chronicler doesn't report this, by the way. You know why? The chronicler is very pro the South. It doesn't want anything negative about what goes on about the house of David. By the way, let me throw this in real quickly. The story of David and Bathsheba, Chronicles doesn't report any of that. You have to go to Samuel. That's right. Okay, here we go. Verse 15, Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house. At that time, Hezekiah stripped the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord, Jono. And from the doorpost.
What I've got here in this one, it says that he at that time Hezekiah cut down the doors and the doorposts of the temple of the Lord. Have you got stripped, or that's interesting?
I have in the RSV stripped the gold from the doors and from the doorpost which Hezekiah, king of Judah, had laid and gave it to the king of Assyria. Here you go. I don't need this gold fancy stuff anymore. Just take it. Take it all. Yeah. Take it all. Take it. Man. So so anyway, now, then later, let me see, let me look at this, 32, 27 through 30. Let me make sure. No, I think I'll go ahead and skip down. One of the things that Hezekiah does later is he shows off to the Babylonians. He wants them to see. They come to visit, Oh,
that's right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And he wants to
and he's
show
like, hey,
them.
check out all the stuff.
Check out all my cool stuff. Yeah, and he shows off everything. And let me see. Now, Isaiah hears about this. Now, Isaiah, obviously, remember Isaiah's at the time of Hezekiah. And he approaches him. He says, hey, Hezekiah, what all did you show these people? And he said, I showed them everything. And here's what Isaiah says. According to 2 Kings 20, verse 17, and Second Chronicles, let's see, I'm sorry, Isaiah 39, verse 5. Same story, Kings and Isaiah. Isaiah said to Hezekiah, "Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days are coming when all that is in your house and that which your fathers have stored up till this day shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, says the Lord. And some of your own sons will be taken," and so forth. So he's predicting. Now remember, Isaiah, you're talking 8th century BCE. We think this through chapter 39 of Isaiah is authentic 8th century BCE Isaiah. But that's the Babylonian destruction of the temple doesn't happen until 586 BCE. So he's 200 years ahead, right? But he tells him, you showed them what you have, and now they're going to come get it. Now, you got another one? You ready?
This leads me to a question.
Okay.
The coming and getting it. So we have Nebuchadnezzar eventually comes and takes all the stuff. Okay, but up until that point, the question becomes with everything that we've just mentioned, what is in the temple that Nebuchadnezzar comes and takes? By this stage, Ross, what is there? We understand that they have found in the time of Josiah, Jeremiah, they've found the scroll of the temple, the scroll of Moses. That was hidden away. That's managed to survive all of this pillaging. But where at this stage is like the menorah? We don't know where is, and the big question is, where is the Ark of the Covenant at this time, Ross?
Excellent questions. And when I was working on the Moses scroll, this was one of the pieces to the puzzle for me, at least my understanding was because I imagined what would it be like. Now, remember, we know that the great discovery in the days of Josiah of the Moses scroll is 622 BCE. And he goes in, he finds it, as you just said. Now, what's striking is that no one says, and some can argue why this is, but you would think that someone would mention the ark, because as far as we know, it's in the temple. They talk about, hey, we found this scroll that Moses wrote, but no mention is made of the ark. So I started wondering, was it even there at that time? Now, here's what we have. Now, remember, Jeremiah is a prophet at the time of Josiah. He becomes a prophet 5 years before this discovery. So he's in the 13th year of Josiah. He becomes a prophet, and from that point until Josiah's death. But what hits me is this. You go through the story of Jeremiah, and he says something very strange. In the days of Josiah, let's go to Jeremiah 3. Now, when we work through Jeremiah, you'll recall that we tried to put it in chronological order.
Oh, you did, yeah. You did an excellent a series on that. Yeah.
So we know that Jeremiah's prophecy begins in the days of Josiah. Interestingly enough, the only prophecy in Jeremiah's book that is clearly indicated to be in the days of Josiah is chapter 3. And if you look down at verse 6, it says, "The Lord said to me in the days of King Josiah." And then it talks about unfaithful Israel. Now go down to verse 15, verse 16. "And when you have multiplied and increased in the land in those days, says the Lord, they shall no longer say, the ark of the covenant of the Lord. It shall not come to mind or be remembered or missed, nor shall another one be made." Now my question is, was this language in the street at the time? In other words, stick with me on this. Is Jeremiah saying that people in his day are saying, hey, Epho Aaron, where is the ark? Where's the Ark of the Covenant? because it's almost like he's arguing against, or he's stating that there's coming a time where that won't come up. Now, here's the interesting thing. We know that the last time the ark is mentioned is in the days of Josiah in the Hebrew Bible. So look with me at 2 Chronicles 35. Now, this is a revival. It's a major revival, right? By the way, this is the Passover. There's no Passover, according to this text, and I think I know why, that's ever take place in Israel since, according to Kings, 2 Kings 23:22, since the days of the judges. Now, 2 Chronicles 35:18 says, no Passover like this had ever been kept since the days of Samuel the prophet. So what was it that happened at this Passover that set it apart? Look at verse 3 of 2 Chronicles 35. And he said, this is Josiah, to the Levites who taught all Israel and who were holy to the Lord. Read that, Jono. What does he say to them?
He says, put the holy ark in the house that Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, built, in the house that he built, as you no longer carry it on your shoulders. See now to the service of the Lord your God and his people Israel, and dispose yourselves by clans according to your divisions and prescribed
now
in the... Yep.
Yeah, so my point is, he tells the
shoulders.
Levites, you've been carrying this thing on your shoulders, go put it in the house that Solomon built. But if we read the story from 2 Samuel chapter 6, the ark is brought into Jerusalem by David. Solomon builds the temple, and at that point, the ark is supposedly, we read that it was put in a special niche that was created for it, and it's under these big angels and the wings and remember all that. And it's in there. Well, how is it that it's not in there? And what does he mean that you've been carrying it on your shoulders? Now, there are different theories. Could it be, and this is speculation, could it be that during the reign of some of these wicked kings, that maybe there was a godly group of Levites, sort of a band of brothers, who said, let's get this out of here and go hide it, lest somebody like Athaliah take it and put it in the temple of Baal.
Yeah, or give it to King whatever, to form an alliance. I mean, they may just not see the value in this, and this is our most valuable asset. We need to take it on the road and hide it.
Yeah, maybe it went on the road. I think that's one of the things. But here's the question that we started with, Jono. How is it? And we've gone for about 45 minutes. I'm going to say my final word, toss it to you, and then maybe we'll open it up for some questions. So how do we know that, because by the way, in Jeremiah 52 and 2 Chronicles 36, when the temple is destroyed by the Babylonians, there's no mention of the Ark of the Covenant. It says that things were looted, things were plundered, but that wasn't. Now, we think we know where it may have gone, but I'll leave that in your court to wrap that piece up. But I wonder, was it ever there at the end?
Yeah, and that is the question. So two questions come to mind at this point, and we've spoken about this before. There are two arks that are described in the Pentateuch. One in Deuteronomy, which is derived from the Moses scroll, just says Moses made a box. Made a box, put the tablets in. Okay, fine, just a wooden box. The elaborate ark with the cherubim and the gold and the poles and all the things, and that's something else. And is this something that was made at a later date, just like the menorah, a much more elaborate menorah, and installed into the temple? So that's a question that comes up. But the other thing is, yes, like you say, when the pending doom of Jerusalem in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, Jeremiah, and the temple, what happened to the ark? And there's a few different theories on that. And one of those theories appears in an article that you brought to my attention, and I want to hear more about that. But one of my favorites is, and yours as well, I think, is 2 Maccabees chapter 2. And I'll read that. It says, one finds in the records, this is from verse 1, that Jeremiah the prophet ordered those who were being deported to take some of the fire, as has been told, and that the prophet, after giving them the law, instructed those who were being deported not to forget the commandments of the Lord, nor to be led astray through their thoughts upon seeing the gold and the silver statues and their adornments. With other similar words, he exhorted them that the law should not depart from their hearts. Okay, in verse 4, it says, it was also in the writing that the prophet, now understand that Maccabees is quoting from another writing, right?
That's right.
It's also in the writing that the prophet, having received an oracle, Ross, ordered that the tents and the ark, here we go, should follow with him, and that he went out to the mountain where Moses had gone up and had seen the inheritance of God. So we're assuming this is Mount Nebo. And Jeremiah came and found a cave somewhere on that side. And he brought there the tents and the ark and the incense, altar of incense, and he sealed up the entrance. And some of those who followed him came to the way, but they couldn't find it. They weren't sure what cave he had put it in. He sealed it up. And when Jeremiah had heard of this, he rebuked them and said, and this is great, the place shall be unknown until God gathers his people together again and shows his mercy. I love that, because that kind of takes us to what is it, Micah chapter 4 that I've spoken about before, particularly relevant in regards to the Moses scroll, I think. And then the Lord will disclose these things, and the glory of the Lord and the cloud will appear, as they were shown in the case of Moses, and as Solomon asked that the place should especially be consecrated. Okay, so the thing about that I love, and I'd place my bets on this square, is the fact that the Moses scroll was found on that side.
That's right.
Of the Dead Sea. Did Jeremiah put them there? It's entirely possible. I don't see a reason why not. So there's that. There are some other accounts, Ross. Do you want to elaborate on that, or do you want to take us to any other accounts of what may have happened?
One thing that I'll do is to piggyback off of what you just said. Clearly, Jeremiah sees the end. I mean, he's there. He superintends it, basically. What we know is that the ark, and presumably all the other items that aren't listed in Jeremiah 52 and 2 Chronicles 36, presumably everything that was part of the temple that wasn't consumed in the fire or mentioned as being looted had to go missing from the time of 622 BCE, when there is this great Passover mentioned in the Bible, and the end. So you've got a narrow window there. Now, Jewish legend says that Jeremiah, some legends say that Jeremiah, some say that Josiah hid the ark. But it's at this time. Now, we have this reference in Maccabees, 2 Maccabees, that I tend to give the hat tip to as well. I think this is the one. But I find it interesting that Jeremiah, imagine this, and this is just my idea. Jeremiah says, hey, there's coming a time when you won't need the ark. And people are going, wait a minute, why would you say that? Why would you say that, Jeremiah? We just saw this big show that Josiah put on, and the priest put it in the temple. What do you mean we're not going to need it or ask for another one? Or this is one idea. Maybe he's saying, because he was part of the smuggling it out. Like, you're not going to miss it. Don't worry about it. It's gone, gone, gone. But he also says some other things. He says that the Torah, he was disturbed. When this scroll was found in 622 BCE, one of the things that Jeremiah says in Jeremiah 8:8 is he says, who are we to say that we are wise and the Torah of the Lord is with us when the lying pen of the scribes has made it into a lie? He said that the Torah had been made into a lie by additions or whatever from scribes. Now, he tells us what one of those is, it seems, in Jeremiah chapter 7, which you kicked us off with. He basically says in verse 21 through 25 that go ahead and sacrifice the meat and eat your meat. When the day that I brought your fathers out of the land of Egypt, I never commanded them concerning sacrifice and offering, but I commanded them to obey my voice. So could it be that he is telling them, remember when he says, put the law on your heart, maybe he's taking those physical objects, storing them away, and preparing a people for thousands of years of dispersion. You're not going to be in Jerusalem. You're not going to have the ark or the temple of the temple of the temple, as you like to say. But you've got to live on. You've got to bring forward the faith until the time comes, as you pointed out. And I think that very possibly in around 1865, Bedouin on that eastern side in Transjordan, fleeing from their enemies, went into a cave, and there in the back of that cave found an ancient scroll. Who knows if somewhere in one of those caves is not a little box that Moses made if it still survived. And in that little box, 2 tablets of stone.
Yeah. And maybe buried under centuries of dust and dirt and goat dung, as you discovered in the cave that you went into when we were in the Wadi Mujib. And once again, the fascinating thing for me, and I'm sure you too, and many others, is the fact that both 2 Maccabees chapter 2 and Micah chapter 4 say that when the word of the Lord goes forth once again, when these things are uncovered, it'll be at the time when God gathers his people back.
Right.
And it happens that the first plot of land in Petah Tikva was purchased in July of 1878, which is exactly the same month when Moses Shapiro was acquiring the 16 leather strips of the Moses scroll. I love that. That kicks off the gathering of the dispersed once again. Very compelling, mighty coincidence, if that's what it is. And how else do we explain it away? All right. So, have we exhausted the topic?
We're ready. We could go on and on. I know I could, and I know you could. And by the way, we're gonna have some time together. Let's tell them about April. And look, if you're ready to jump in, somebody can raise your hand. And once Jono gives this good news, then we'll bring you on. But go ahead, Jono. Tell us the good news.
Now, listen, Daniel. I hope you've been making notes of things that you want to tell us, because I really want to hear what's going through your mind. But is Dave on at the moment? Dave, I can't see Dave.
I don't see that he is. I don't think he is tonight.
Well, thanks to Dave and Patty once again, and United Israel. It is just my great privilege to be able to come over to Louisiana once again, St. Francisville, and participate in the annual conference, the UI conference. This is number 81, I do believe.
Yep.
And it was a great privilege of mine to make a presentation at the 79th, and God willing, I'll be doing exactly the same this coming conference at the end of April. What are the dates, Ross?
April the 19th, 20th, and 21st here in St. Francisville, Louisiana. I'm going to post in the YouTube description of this video the sign up where people can go to the conference registration page. And people want to do that early. I mean, we're going to, at some point, we may have to cut it off. It's going to be, people are going to be excited. Who wouldn't want to come and spend some good quality time with the likes of you and me and Dr. James Tabor and Dave and Patty Tyler? And we've got, I know that Morgan is on. Morgan is already registered. Ronnie Fulcher will likely be here. I'm sure that others, I just haven't seen the registrations yet. It's going to be a packed house, man.
Well, there was what, 70 plus last a couple of years ago. Yeah. I was just greatly, I loved it. So many people that I knew, so many people that had been on the Tanakh tour turned up, And so I don't doubt it will be a full house. So if you want to come register, it doesn't cost anything, does it, Ross?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Well, we
free.
don't charge for the registration. They just have to pay for their stay in a hotel
There you go.
nearby. So
there you go. So let us know that you're coming so that we can cater for that. But there really is just limited space. So that'd be great. But looking forward to meeting a lot of people, catching up with a lot of people. That is at the end of April at the UI conference, St. Francisville, Louisiana.
Now, do we have any questions or comments? Look, we covered this so thoroughly. Maybe we just exhausted the topic, Jono, and I don't know. I don't think that could be the case. But if there are any questions or comments,
come on, put your hand up.
Let's see.
Put your hand up.
Anyone?
There he is.
There we go. There he goes. All right.
Just want to know your thoughts. That's all. Come on.
Daniel, I have just invited you to the stage, brother. Can you?
Hey, man.
You may have to unmute.
Yeah.
Can we hear you?
I'm unmuted. I'm unmuted.
Wonderful.
All right, just some thoughts.
Welcome to the show, Daniel.
This is profoundly frustrating. There's no video. I'm going to whine. You can have Seth trim this out later.
If you keep complaining, we'll just boot you off the stage. Get to your point, sir. Caller, go ahead and get to your point.
Okay. Well, you made a lot of points about the obscure meanderings of the scripture and the competing reports based on the geography of the chroniclers, whether they were from the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom, the minutia of this. Everything in there was given to this guy, and then a few chapters later, a few centuries later, a few years later, everything was given. Everything, like it's almost like this reservoir that is the temple storehouse would fill and get emptied and fill and get emptied and fit. But it's funny how there's really no reference to the key furniture, the key object until we get to the end, which is this.
That is curious.
Josiah, Jeremiah period. So whether you love the idea of the Ark of the Covenant or not, because there are people who are critical of it and think it's an element of idolatry and an invention of the priests, that may be true. But still, either way, whether it's actually Hashem's idea or it's the invention of Jewish priests, generally, regardless, it's an important piece of furniture to this culture of people in this time frame.
Right.
I think I really like what you said tonight, Ross, and with regard to Jeremiah's naysaying about it. Well, and of course it even gets recorded in his book. The day's coming when no one's even going to talk about it anymore. You're not going to be looking for it. It's like what am I trying to say? It's like psychological warfare. It's like propaganda. It's like, oh no, we're not talking about that anymore. A little hand waving going on because either he knew he was going to, either he already had the order to do so. I'm talking about what's recorded in 2nd Maccabees, the oracle of the Lord to him to move these things out. And he had family contacts within the temple who had the authority to move these kinds of objects. And because there's different roles, and his family was associated with those who had the authority to do it. So he comes to them. They knew he had a prophetic touch on his life. He looks them in the eye and says, I believe that we're going to be invaded. I believe that this corrupt system is going to come to a screeching halt. And the Lord has told me he wants me to take this and that and the tent to store it in. Now, in my parenthetically, in my 2nd Maccabees chapter 2, which is the KJV translation, it does mention the tabernacle, that he took the ark and the tabernacle. I think that's a bad English translation. I think that at this point, centuries post Shiloh, we're not talking about the elaborate as designed, as described in Exodus. We're not talking about the gigantic tabernacle we're talking about something akin to the tent of David, which was fabric and small and concise.
Okay.
So I think that is the container that is the tent.
That's interesting because I did wonder about that. Yeah.
Let me jump in real quick. Number one, this book, and I'm going to put the link. This is Daniel's book. Daniel's book is called The Redemption Corridor, and you can get it on Amazon, but I'm going to let Daniel tell you another place because it comes with this very, very nice map that goes with it. But Daniel and I were talking today, actually, and he covers in his book several pages. I'm looking through the various theories as to where the ark ended up, if you will. So get that. But let me say one thing, and this is almost a question, Daniel. In the second Maccabees reference, it says the tent, as you said, in this translation, it says the tent and the ark. So if the tent is not the tabernacle, which I would agree with you, here's an idea, and you don't have to answer this now because it's my crazy musing, but Richard Elliott Friedman proposed and wrote a major paper on this, that in the Holy of Holies, the word that typically is translated as curtain, perochet, I think is the term. I may be mistaken. I'm not looking at the Hebrew, and I may confuse my terms, but there is a tent, he says, over that covers the dimensions of the whole room. Now, I don't know if you've read that or come across that, but when I read this, I wonder, could that be the tent that's talking about? Maybe an inner tent that was in there, because it's called the house of the tent.
Certainly possible. But if we are, it's still considerably smaller. What I'm talking about is the tabernacle, is the mobile tabernacle of the wilderness, which also, let's be fair, some people say is a later invention and contrivance. Nobody in the wilderness had something that elaborate. Although there are those who are hardliners, as it were, fundamentalists, who hold to the fact that and I'm talking about large wooden timbers covered with gold inside the sockets, all these fabrics, these ropes, these curtains, these drapes, these long ropes and cable. It's that didn't make it past Shiloh or Shiloh. When they by the time, if you believe this literally all the way through, using the Bible as your guide,
I like to do that.
By the time they get to Shiloh and set up the Mishkan, even the Mishkan, this 300, it's way older than the United States, guys. This is further away from. This is further, the distance between Joshua and the time when Shiloh falls, 370 years later. It's almost 4 centuries. That's a huge gap.
And it's literally out in the weather. I mean, that is the point of it.
Well, but Jewish tradition, Chabad, even the Temple Institute have documented. It's very general. They derive their view from Talmudic sources that suggest that at Shiloh, the tent from the wilderness slowly evolved into a pseudo temple at Shiloh. So even Scott Stripling, who's doing his archaeological work at the Shiloh Tell, has identified a place where he thinks the masonry dates to Iron Age. And he's found some masonry that he thinks is, I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I think that this is really preliminary, but he believes that the Mishkan was replaced. It's wooden, and what happened to the gold that went around all of those wooden timbers? Well, that was somebody decided we're going to melt that down and do something else with it, and they instead replaced those perimeter walls of this thing with masonry. There's a lot of detail. We don't have the time, but I'm just saying that the original tabernacle, as described in Exodus, dissolved and became a masonry hybrid, and then when it was destroyed by presumably, it's not confirmed to my knowledge.
Mm.
Presumably, it's believed that Shiloh was overrun by the Philistines at some point. But before any of that happened, what left? Well, the ark was taken out of there. That's why it was.
Ichabod.
David brings it. Yeah, all of that happens. Sure, but then I'm saying David finally gets it over to Jerusalem, and
right. So we just jumped from A to B there, Daniel. Was there anything that you wanted to any detail? I mean, we are running short on time, but was there any detail in between A and B that that we hadn't mentioned that you might want to mention?
No. I think the most interesting thing is to be focused. And I'm sorry for the elaboration. There's no mention. The Bible doesn't say, and I think that's deliberate. Whether it's real or not, whether it's a God thing or a Jewish religious invented thing, like it or not, the Jews don't talk about it. It's not written about. They've even got their key prophet, who, at least as far as Second Maccabees is concerned, was given an order to get it out of there, providing disinformation about it. Yeah. So it disappears. If you wanted to hide the most important religious artifact in your culture, not talking about it, not recording it in your annals might be a wise decision.
Yeah.
So, and all the treasures you talked about in your long delineation tonight, those are just, that's just junk. That's just gold this and brass that and bronze that and silver this and this dish and pot and pan. If the Babylonians, when they destroyed Jerusalem, had gotten their hands on the most important religious artifact, the listing of what they reported as having been taken, they would have been super proud of it, as proud as Rome was about the huge menorah that ends up on the Arch of Titus. I don't think so. It's the Arch of Titus, bruh.
It's the Ark of Titus. Okay, that's good.
Kidding.
All right.
Is it the Ark of Titus? Is it the Ark of Titus or the Arch?
Arch.
Okay. Look,
you're arching now?
One thing. This article is something we don't have time to go into, but I want people to look it up. Jerusalem's Temple Treasures, Where Did They Go? By Elena Dugan. Biblical Archaeology Review, Summer 2023. And I'll also put the link to this in the description of the YouTube video. Daniel, you have been a wonderful addition to our show tonight, and we're going to have to do this more often. So
appreciate you coming on.
Knows?
My pleasure.
Well, now listen, I just want to ask you one more question because you've mentioned this, Ross. What is this? The Masechet Kelim. Masechet Kelim. We were I don't know anything about this. What do you know about it? Do you know anything about it, Daniel? Okay.
Zero. I learned about it today. Ross lit that fuse under me today.
I did. We're going to have to come back to that, Jono, because it's fascinating.
Another time.
It could be a forgery. Maybe it's not a forgery. This is what this article is about. And but again, look, we don't have an ark. We don't have an ark. We don't have a menorah. We don't have a temple. We don't have the tablets. We don't have the Urim and the Tumim. We don't have. But what we do have, Jono and Daniel and all of you, is we have a way to approach the God of the Bible without any of that. And Jeremiah tried his best to set us up for that day. He said, there's a day coming when you won't have this stuff. And we're in that day. So how do we do it? The law has to be written on the heart. It's the thing that I think we were supposed to get from the very beginning. It's in the Moses scroll. It was put into Deuteronomy at a later date. And Jeremiah, I think, read that in the scroll. Now, I'm going to drop one cool bomb before we leave.
Do it.
It was in the scroll that his daddy discovered in the temple in 622 BCE. Look, if people have not read the Moses scroll, I don't know what to say, Jono. And
hey, I'm telling you, now is Josh here? Because Josh isn't even here, is he? Is he here? Because I told him to go and read it. You know what he's doing right now? He's reading it. Okay, that's good.
And if you don't,
right, Daniel,
if you ever
thanks,
hear the expression, "Don't judge a book by its cover," I tell people to judge a book by its cover because Daniel designed that cover. So
that's
look,
right.
Also, again, Daniel's
Mighty
book,
Fine
nice
too.
cover.
Redemption Corridor.
It's a nice cover. There you
It's
go.
a beautiful cover. Oh my gosh.
Hey, you guys, have a wonderful, wonderful night. And listen, we're wrapping up Hanukkah, so light it up. You've got a couple more nights. And so here's the thing. Join us. Hopefully this group will join us and watch it with the YouTube audience as well. Thanks for all your support and your friendship and for being here with us as part of our audience. It's been real fun for me.
Yeah.
Anything else, Jono?
Don't think so. Anyone else putting up their hand?
All right.
Nope.
Hey, that was good. Right. I'll see you next week, Jono. And look, one more thing. Join me Saturday morning, Ross K. Nichols TV, right here on YouTube. Join me Saturday morning. We're going to have another exciting edition of the Pentateuch. A new look. We're going through Torah portion Miketz. We're in the Joseph saga, so don't miss it. Join us Saturday morning, 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And until then, Jono, it's always a pleasure.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Thank you. See you next week.